Good evening and warm welcome to all the participants to this amazing conversation which is going to start now. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this 184th WiseViews Leadership Conversation with Dr. Mallika Sarabhai, and she has already joined us. She will be visible to you in a moment from now, and we are excited to have her here. We will start an introduction, and after that, we will have her opening remarks for us. But I want to tell you that we are extremely happy to see a large list of people who have joined this evening in anticipation of witnessing live this conversation with Dr. Mallika Sarabhai. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening and welcome to this conversation once again. On behalf of everyone here and on behalf of ICFAI, I wholeheartedly welcome you and thank you for your presence.
Thank you.
Let me do a brief introduction.
I'm always very embarrassed. You should have kept me hidden when you were introducing me.
No. I think I think we'll do first a large personality. We'll try and see how short we can do this presentation in terms of introduction. Allow me to share my screen, ma'am. As I mentioned, these are WiseViews Leadership Conversations, which we hold every Friday, and this is serial number 184. With February becoming fabulous and Dr. Mallika Sarabhai joining us. So opening remarks by ma'am will be for about 20 minutes, and after that we'll have roughly about 40 minutes of Q&A. And here is my golden opportunity to introduce ma'am. Dr. Mallika Sarabhai is one of India's leading choreographers and dancers whose name is synonymous with artistic brilliance and social transformation. She is the co-director of the prestigious Darpana Academy of Performing Arts, an institution she has guided for nearly 30 years. As a soloist and with her renowned dance company Darpana, she has created and performed an impressive repertoire of classical and contemporary works that have captivated audiences worldwide. That's a French word and I pronounced it wrongly. Repertoire, actually it is. She is born into the illustrious Sarabhai family in Ahmedabad. She is the daughter of two visionaries, the legendary classical dancer Mrinalini Sarabhai and the pioneering space scientist Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. They don't need any introduction as well. She first made a name for herself in India as a film actress before earning recognition as an exceptional young dancer in Bharatanatyam and Kuchipudi, winning her first of many awards at just 18 years of age. Her global acclaim soared when she portrayed Draupadi in Peter Brook's The Mahabharata, performing across continents for 5 years in both French and English. Dr. Mallika Sarabhai has always been more than an artist. She is a crusader for societal education and women's empowerment. In the year 1989, she broke new ground with her hard-hitting solo theatrical work, Shakti, The Power of Women, the first in a series of powerful productions addressing critical issues. Her performances such as Sita's Daughters, An Idea Named Meera, Kadak Badshahi have toured globally, raising awareness and advocating for change. In the mid-90s, she ventured into creating her own contemporary dance vocabulary, crafting works that have been showcased in North America, Scotland, Singapore, China, Australia, and India. Through Darpana Communications, she has also spearheaded impactful television programming on women's empowerment, environmental consciousness, and public health with over 3,000 hours of broadcast content. Many awards she won, and some of them are here. Padma Bhushan in 2010, conferred by the Government of India for her contributions to the arts. Golden Star Award in the year 1977, awarded for Best Dance Soloist at the Theatre des Champs Elysees, Paris. Gaurav Puraskar, awarded by the Government of Gujarat for her contributions to drama and dance. Chevalier d'Ans l'Ordre des Palmes Académiques, this is again French, conferred by the French government for her contributions to drama and dance. Armed with an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad and a PhD in organizational behavior, Dr. Mallika Sarabhai seamlessly blends intellect, artistry, and advocacy in her multifaceted career. Thank you so much, ma'am. What a wonderful profile, and we are blessed to have you with us this evening. Thank you once again, and I welcome you to this conversation. I will also introduce my esteemed colleague, Dr. Prasad. He is the Senior Director at Academic Wing at ICFAI Group. He brings 3 decades of rich experience to the table as an entrepreneur, as a corporate professional, and also as an academic at ICFAI now. He holds BTech from IIT Bombay and PGDM from IIM Kolkata. Thank you, Professor Prasad, for joining. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Once again, I welcome you.
You know, ever since Sri Rao pinned me down at Hyderabad airport, I think it was,
Delhi
Uh,
Airport.
Delhi Airport, where I was drinking a cup of coffee. He has been trying to persuade me to give him a date, and my performance career has taken precedence. And I've just had to say, not this month, can we do it next month, and so on. And then he pinned me down, and I got pinned down. And I've been thinking for the last few days, when somebody asks me to share my life's journey, if I were to boil it down to one or two learnings, pivotal learnings that have shaped my life, what would that be? And I want to ask you, my audience, what do you think every single person in India and probably the world has in common today? Our humanity, of course, and the fact that we're all blood and bones and skeletons and so on. But what? It is fear. It is insecurity. It is the insecurity that today's neo-capital world pins onto us because it says that we are not good enough unless we use this or buy this or show this or have this. It is the insecurity that governments feed to us by saying that person is the other will come and get you. It's the insecurity of an uncertain future because of climate change, because of civil unrest, because of religious animosity, because of bulldozers that can come and destroy our livelihoods and our lives. It is the fear of losing everything we have. In India, it is the fear of being shamed by society. Log kya kahenge? When does this fear and shame take center stage, and why? I think they take center stage because willy-nilly, either consciously or through circumstances, we all do things that we want to hide. We are ashamed of something we have done. We are ashamed of lies we have spoken. We are ashamed because we have one public face and another private face. We are ashamed that we will be found out. Why am I beginning with this? Because two occurrences in my early life determined what my answer to these two regressive factors, fear and shame and insecurity were. I've often told this story, but I've never spoken to you, so I will tell them again. I was 5 years old, my first day at school, in a Montessori school. We were seated in a circle and asked to draw a face on the piece of paper we had in front of us. I drew a face and drew the ears in the wrong place. And the boy sitting next to me turned to me and said, "Tu gadhi hai." I got very upset. When I was young, Amma was always on tour and Papa was always babysitting. So I went home and sat on the ledge facing the driveway where his car would come in, crying. And Papa came and said, "What's the matter, Mali?" And I said, "I'm not going back to that school again." So he said, "Darling, it's your first day." I said, "I know, but a little boy called me Gadhi because I drew ears on the wrong place." So he took me into his lap and he said, "Mallika, what are you?" So I said, "I'm a little girl." He said, "You know that, don't you? You know that you're not an ass, that you're a little girl?" Where that poor little chap sitting next to you can't tell the difference between a donkey and a little girl. You'd feel sorry for him. He's showing how much he doesn't know. It's not a reflection on you. Fast forward 7 years, I was in Shreyas, a school run by Papa's older sister, a Montessori school, the first Montessori school in India, started by Madam Montessori. And we had two older boys from East Africa, East African Gujaratis, being returned during the Idi Amin period. And they had a knife fight about whose girlfriend I was. I was all of 12, 11. And one of them knifed the other. And my aunt, the principal, called my father to discuss his daughter's behavior. And while the two of them went into the principal's office, I sat outside fuming because I knew that I had done nothing. I didn't even know these boys. So Papa came out grinning from ear to ear. And I sort of looked at him and I said, "What happened?" And he said, "You know, I knew this would start, but I didn't think it would start this early." So he took me home and I said, "This is all very unfair and this is not okay. And why doesn't my aunt believe me?" And I had nothing to do with them. And he sat me down and he talked to me and he said, "Listen, Mallika, all of us have to take a decision of whether we want to follow the rules of society, which are often very restrictive, which are often based on lies, which are often based on patriarchy, which are often based on a hierarchical structure where the upper classes and the upper castes make rules to keep the others down. Or you have to take a decision like your mother and I have, that we will find our own truths and we will find our own paths. And it's not easy because you get stoned all the time, you get abused, but we have decided that that is the path we will follow. And I didn't think I'd have to talk to you about this early, but think about it. Think about whether you want to follow the rules of society, which will make you very acceptable, or you need to find your own truth. And I remember going away and thinking about it for 3 days and coming back to him and saying, "Papa, I have to find my own truths. I don't care what society will say. I'm sure I will be strong enough to take the abuses and the stones. And I think these two conversations with Papa, more than anything else, have led to the life I have led to the battles I have fought, continue to fight, led to every decision I have taken. I decided when I went into public life, when I was quite young, as Sudhakar ji said, I went into films very early. I became a well-known dancer when I was still very young. And I decided that whatever the consequences, I didn't want to hide anything I did. So I remember very early when I was doing Gujarati movies, I had started smoking in the Indian Institute of Management because everybody smoked. And when you were in a project and up all night with 11 guys, you came out selling of smoke anyway. So after about 6 months, you say, give me a drag, and then it becomes 3 drags and 4 drags, and they suddenly become a smoker. And I remember smoking on a set in Baroda in a studio, and Gujarat Samachar, our leading Gujarati newspaper, saying Mallika doesn't even have the maryada to smoke in secret. And I thought, my God, they want me to be a hypocrite and smoke in cigarette and pretend I'm not smoking, when I am saying, yes, I smoke, and there's nothing judgmental in whatever you say. You can say what you want, but I will do in public what I do. And it was then that I once again decided that I would try and not have skeletons in my cupboard, that people could threaten me and say, unless you follow this diktat, unless you follow our mantra, unless you do this, this, and this, we will tell the world what a shit you are. So in every interview I've given over the last 40 years, when my marriage was breaking up, when I was having difficulty with depression, when I was going through a non-creative phase, I have tried to lay it out there in the public so that nobody can come and threaten me to keep quiet by threatening me to spill the beans. All of us have this question to face. And really, a life of shame and fear, if you have the choice of not having the shame and fear, is really not a life. It is a life of living in fear of being found out. And if you're constantly worried about being found out, how do you let yourself blossom? How do you make yourself smell the flowers every day? Say to the people you love, I love you, or I miss you. Be able to speak your mind. Be able to follow a dharma of ethics and truth in a world that is built on lies and corruption. So if there is anything that I have followed in my life, it is these truths. It's been hard. I've gone against the government. I have had cases piled up against me, false cases, which later got thrown out in the Supreme Court, but many, many cases. And I have spent many years going to the police station every day, out on bail, for nothing I had done except speak the truth and speak for people who I thought were being exploited, killed, made voiceless. I continue that. I continue being under siege. My institution is under siege, but we continue standing. I continue saying what I have to say because I think each of us has the right to become the best of what is our possibility. And we don't. We bring up children to be slaves. We bring up children to be slavish to their books, never to learn, never to question. We bring up children to become cogs in the wheel. Think of this, of how parenting goes in India. When you are 18, 20, your parents decide you should get married. In most cases, they decide who you should marry, when you should marry, how much the wedding will cost. Then the minute you are married, they start asking you when the baby is arriving. The baby arrives, the parents decide what they'll be named, which school they'll go to, what clothes they'll wear, what subjects they'll take, which college they'll go to, which job they will take, whether they'll take a job or not, and when they are of marriageable age, without having taken a single decision for their own lives in their entire life, they are married and become parents to let that whole treadmill go on and on and on. So unless we teach our children to be inquisitive, to take moral stands, to take decisions, to be able to cogently sit across the table and talk about what the pros and cons of anything are, how can we expect a thinking public? I remember as the youngest of a family of 4, getting into decision-making about things that concerned all 4 of us, my brother, my parents, and I, and often taking a completely contrary decision or contrary point of view, and with the rule being that it wasn't a majority decision, it had to be a unanimous one. My parents or my brother sitting me down and taking me through alternatives and making me see the pros and the cons, sometimes for days on it. Waste of time? Perhaps. But I decided and was trained to take an ethical stand about everything. To take a stand to not faff around sitting on the fence. What I try and do through my work is to open a window so that people see that we usually live the lives with scripts that somebody else has written for us. A parent is frustrated that they couldn't become an engineer, so the child is forced into becoming an engineer. A parent is frustrated by not living the good life, so the child is sent away to a better future in a better country where many of them don't have better lives. When do we ask them their opinion? When do we give them the tools so that they blossom into thinking individuals, into individuals who will be able to, without violence, have a conciliatory dialogue? We don't have dialogues in this country. We have non-zero sum games. We have a situation where if I am right, you have to be wrong. And we are seeing the results of that. We are seeing the violence that comes from that. The very act of conciliation, reconciliation, ahimsa in thought and deed has completely gone from our country. That is what my work is very much about. I think the arts are a very potent language to cut across walls of prejudice and walls of हमारे कम्युनिटी में तो ऐसे नहीं होता, हमारे परिवार में ऐसे नहीं होता. हाँ, लेकिन कीजिए ना, शायद चेंज की जरूरत है. Today, the upper classes, the educated classes don't talk of dowry. But when they have a wedding that goes on for 5 days and 1,000 people are in a 5-star hotel or flown somewhere for a destination wedding, what is that if not dowry in another form? What is that? This constant having to prove yourself by what you own, what is that if not a submergence of the self, of self-choice? How can we learn to find our own truth? How can we learn to go inside of ourselves, to be honest with ourselves? How many of us actually are honest with ourselves? We are frightened of even asking ourselves, am I satisfied? Am I happy? Am I smelling the flowers? Because we are complicit in the lies that are put around us like a garland. We are complicit in not wanting to be the odd one out. We are complicit in saying, chalega yaar, hota rehta hai, hum kya kare? But we must do something. We have to do something. We have to think about it at least, and not just go from one step to the next like a baggage train that just passes and passes and passes. If my life is worth anything, then if I have touched a few lives, if I have made a difference in the hundreds of students who study at Darpana or the hundreds of thousands of audiences that I interact with, if somewhere I have been able to even think that I have opened an alternative in their mind, to be able to think differently, at least to question, what am I doing? Then I think my work is successful. And the very fact that you are still inviting me to speak, that hundreds of people are still inviting me to perform my very radical pieces, is, I think, proof of that. Shri Rao, I don't know if it's 20 minutes or not, but I'm turning it over for you. Over to you.
That's awesome, ma'am. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I think you started with two significant conversations that you had with Dr. Vikram Sarabhai ji, and those are actually leading to, or that led to, having poignant discussions with him, and that shaped your entire thinking of not doing anything that you will have to hide it, a life of fear and shame. I think from that, it opens up the entire conversation here. How a leader has cultivated, crafted one's thinking, and then it offers a perspective of alternative to think and question oneself regularly at various times. At times when you are in touch with the immediate society, your classroom, your school, college, to the people that comment in media, and to the people who are neighbors. I think every time, there are prejudices, there are judgments made, but I think constantly what you have told us are some lessons in everyday life. One is about do everything above board, and so that there is no fear or shame to hide anything. You're not compelled to hide anything. Number two, the key points in parenting, the key points in teaching the children, the decision making, in inculcating decision making pretty early in life, making youngsters thinking individuals, making them work on conciliatory dialogue, and also how to help them think differently. I think several points have been touched in a beautiful storytelling manner, very much relevant to your own life. I think it couldn't have been put better. I'm very, very happy that these opening remarks will serve as a fountain for lots of questions that we are going to have now. Without wasting much time, what I will do is I'll request Professor Prasad to come in. And before he comes in, I want to once again acknowledge and welcome all the distinguished individuals who have joined around the screen today. I'm sure many from performing arts, many from education, many from tech and finance area, some of them from architecture. People have joined from all walks of life. And I wholeheartedly welcome all of them to stay glued and make the most of it while ma'am is here. Over to you, Professor Prasad, for the first cluster of Q&A. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Rao. Thank you, ma'am, for a wonderful stage that you've set for us to ask questions. One of the key takeaways I had is the open-mindedness that you developed without with the encouragement of your parents, which has helped you to take all the decisions in your life with transparency and with peace of heart. So my first question starts there. You have had many opportunities in various walks of life, and you made many life and career decisions based on the background that you come from, the kind of thinking that you have. So would you be able to help us understand how you've made the principles behind making these life and career decisions? This is for the audience, and it's also for Gen X and Gen Alpha who are going to make their decisions going ahead.
I'm very privileged that both sides of my family, Amma's family and Papa's family, for the previous 2 or 3 generations were involved in first the independence movement and then in nation building. And while I was growing up, when I was still a young child, I'm a several years after independence child, there was never any talk in the house, in the larger house. We used to have meals with our grandparents and the entire family in Ahmedabad every Sunday. The talk was always about societal change. So somebody was working in education, everybody was building institutions. My uncle and aunt were starting the National Institute of Design and bringing in world famous designers. I've never heard a conversation about sari buying or jewelry buying or building a new house or buying a new car. Never. I have never been to a jeweler's unless I have been asked to inaugurate a jewelry shop. These were just not issues. What was seen and heard was the excitement of being able to transform lives. And I think both my brother Karthikeya and I, he's in the field of environment education, and I saw our parents using different languages, one of science and one of the arts, to basically bring light into lives that needed a window opened. I grew up with seeing Amma create performances that talked of dowry violence, that talked of atrocity against Dalits, that talked of the destruction of the Silent Valley by the proposed Silent Valley Hydel project. And I thought all dancers did this. I was very rudely surprised when I discovered that Amma was one of the only ones who was doing this kind of work. Papa also, his life was not about sending a mission to the moon or Mars. It was about how space technology could bring science and health and education to the most marginalized person in the most marginalized part of India. So I think that's what we thought was important in life, that we had privilege. I don't mean privilege of money, I mean privilege of education, privilege of having heard some of the finest minds in the world, because as children, we were always encouraged to be present when some Nobel laureate came in or some philosopher came in or whoever. As children, we were encouraged to take part in the conversation. So that was our great privilege. The privilege was traveling, going with Amma and Papa wherever they were working or wherever Papa was in a conference. And that this privilege really had to be paid forward. And the paying forward was to see how I could become a voice for those who didn't have a voice, how I could fight for justice for people who were too marginalized or too poor or too frightened for their livelihoods or their families to ask for justice. So in many senses, it was just the thing to do. I mean, we didn't think of an alternative. We thought this is what we are here for in this life. And this is what we will do with passion and joy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I think you have highlighted the aspect of purpose, given the background from which you've come, and therefore how you have laid out your mission and life and decisions accordingly. I'd like to take this into the context of the current, the new generations, Generation Alpha and slightly before Generation. They are at a certain stage. You have already mentioned the kind of, the environmental forces that play on their minds. So if that is the stage for them now, how would you elaborate on purpose for this generation, for the average Indian who goes to, the so many institutions that we have in this country?
I think in some ways, the new generation is coming into a terrifying time and a very exciting time. Terrifying because of the way we are as a global citizen. Terrifying because we probably will not have clean air to breathe in a few years, or clean water to drink we don't have today. But exciting because today the possibility exists that you can say, okay, my family has these 7 expectations from me: that I earn a proper thing, that I build a house or buy a house, that I have a vehicle, that I have enough money to look after them, that I have enough money to have a child and educate them. Fine. It's a defined set of expectations. And today, the younger generation have the choice of saying, okay, my father wants me to be an engineer. Okay, I will be an engineer. That's part of my filial duty. I will be an engineer and follow and fulfill these 7. But then I have my entire life out in front of me to do what I want to do, to be able to blossom how I want to. So people say to me, how do you do it? And I said, okay, you are a passionate musician. You want to really have a career, but you have all this pressure that ye karna chahiye, beta, humne itna sacrifice kiya hai aapke liye. Parents sacrificing for their parents wanted children. That's why we are around. Otherwise, why should we be around? So this whole sacrifice business is somewhat dubious. But to be able to say, okay, I will continue with my music as a hobby, but I will go and I will earn this, but I can do it in 8 years or 10 years or 20 years. If I'm 20, I'm still only 40. I have fulfilled all those obligations. I will keep my little fire of music burning. And at 40, having fulfilled the obligation, I will see that it blossoms. Maybe it takes over my whole life, but I can do it because I fulfilled my obligations. And now I can be who I want to be. Now I can become who I want to become because I have done everything. I paid back all my societal debts, all my familial debts, and I still have 30, 40, 50 years to go. I think that's what I'm telling the new generation, whether you call them alpha or beta, that listen, you can set a time limit. You can say, in these many years, I will fulfill all these obligations. I'm not saying don't fulfill them. Fulfill them. Please fulfill them. But know that it's a short-term plan. Don't think that when I'm 60, I'll still be doing this. You don't have to, because the kind of work you can generate today, the kind of incomes you can generate today, if you get a job or if you become an entrepreneur, is incredible. And it can be a time-bound thing. And set your target and say, I will nurture this passion till then and let it grow. I won't let it go aside so that one day it can find its fruition. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. I think it's a wonderful methodology. It fits in with, I think many people also think that way today. And I think it also balances some of the concerns that parents have and, kind of, at least for the short term, not get them in the path on the extreme side or facilitate on the good side. And I think it's a wonderful methodology.
And the other thing I wanted to say is, I work a lot with college kids, and some of whom get faced into, अब तो शादी करनी पड़ेगी, माँ बाप कहते हैं करनी पड़ेगी और वो लोग choose करेंगे, etc. And I say to 15 and 16-year-olds, why don't you start having conversations with your parents now about what does marriage mean? What does it mean to be happy? What do they think would make me happy? What do I think will make... These conversations don't happen. So either you rebel and you break your parents' heart or whatever, or they pretend their heart is broken, they throw you out of the family, or they say you are a shame, you're the black sheep, aapne hamari parivar ki na katwa di, etc., etc., etc. But if you do have the conversation if you have a conversation, if you're a young girl and say कि आप मुझे और मेरे भाई को अलग क्यों ट्रीट करते हो, आप बताइए ना. तो अगर आप जो मुझे प्रोटेक्ट करना चाहते हैं, तो आपको भाई को भी कहना चाहिए ना कि वो दूसरी लड़कियों को प्रोटेक्ट करे. आप कहते हो, एंड ब्रदर्स शुड से कि अगर हमारी बहन 10 बजे घर आ जाए तो हम भी आ जाएंगे, क्योंकि हम नहीं देखते हैं क्यों हम अलग हो. These are conversations to be had. That is how slowly society will change. You have to educate your parents. Your parents sending you to school is one education. But if you are a thinking individual, you have to educate your parents, because they are also caught in the same rut. They have gone through the same assembly line process. Perhaps I'll give you an example. You know, there's the Darpana campus where I'm sitting just now. And then across the road, we have a Darpana communications office. And because we ran out of space here. So often I used to come, and outside Darpana, there are benches where all the mothers sit. There's some fathers, but it's mostly mothers or kids who come here. Now, our course is 7 years. So the same mothers sit outside every day, 3 times a week for 7 years. That's a long time. So one day, about 15 years ago, I was coming back and I looked at them and they were talking of some trivia and cutting vegetables and I don't know what else. And I turned to them and I said, "Aapko dance सीखना है?" अरे हम ऐसे हम अब इस उम्र में कैसे करें क्या? I said, मैंने ये नहीं पूछा कि आपको डांसर बनना है. मैंने आपको कहा आपको डांस सीखना है. अरे हम सीख सकते हैं. As a result of which, today in my first year class, I have 7-year-olds and I have 55-year-olds. And the 55-year-olds have the understanding to explain to the 7-year-olds, and the 7-year-olds have the physical ability and the memory to. So we are bridging two. Now, the older people who do their graduation, the transformation in their families is so heartening. I have children calling from abroad and saying, अगर पापा फीस नहीं पे करते तो हमें आप बता दीजिए, हमें ऐसी माँ थी हमें मालूम ही नहीं है. And husbands coming to me and saying, you know, she wakes up with a smile, she wants to come to the class, she stands in front of the mirror practicing. I didn't know I was married to this woman. Now, if we can give this kind of opportunity to young people as well, what more gift of life can we give?
Excellent, ma'am. I think you have opened up 2 more dimensions. One is about the need for communication through conversations that we need to have in the family. And that many times parents may be putting it across in a way, but when you start the conversation, perhaps things may be very different from how one assumes that it could be. Like you've given a good example of the mother standing. And I think that's very relevant because the frames of communication are also very different. And I think when the conversation starts, the terminology also will get understood and perhaps things will be far better. I think the third thing that you've mentioned is about, this senior junior doing something together where, there is energy, which is not the language, but perhaps something else which is energizing, and that in turn is increasing the overall family bonding, which I think is also a very important takeaway from what you're saying. Thank you, ma'am. 3 wonderful insights. I'll take this to the next question using this thread. You've mentioned about this, this excitement versus terrifying. So they are completely opposite parts of the DNA. And the world is actually increasing in its entropy. It's moving in that direction, and this will get only more complex, more chaotic. And of course, technology is playing its part to increase that. Now, how do you blend creativity with leadership? I mean, you come from the arts, so much more creativity there than when we discuss normally in, kind of fields like ours. So how do you blend creativity with leadership in one's career, and how do we inspire and influence the team members in this journey that you're discussing?
Passion, I think. I'm very passionate about everything I do and I say. And I have team members sitting around me here, so I hope I'm reflecting what they feel, which is that I hope that my passion will make them impassioned. And I hope that seeing me do everything from top to bottom and not having a hierarchy, this is not my work, that is not my work. Just a minute before you started, I was teasing a colleague of mine. I asked him to please fetch me some water because I can't move, the camera is fixed here. So, and I said to him that I think since 2005, when I moved into this office, I have the same thermos, which neither keeps anything cold nor hot. And I have 2 unmatched glasses, and this is the halat of the director of Darpana. So he's laughing. So, it's, in Darpana, we have at least 10 people who are 3rd generation in Darpana. Darpana is 75 years old this year. So their grandparents worked here, their parents worked here, and they have worked here. And they've all climbed up the ladder. On my right is my technical director who runs our theater. And his parents were here. He didn't want to go to school, was brought up with my children. So used to sing English songs long before he went to school, but didn't want to go to school. And I sort of coaxed him into going into electric training. And here he is as my technical director. He deals with companies from all across the world. Tonight we have a play by the actor Danish Hussain, and he deals with all of them. He deals with a theater which has 300 lights and 5 projectors and very complicated technical things. And he deals with it. And I think however much I scold him, and I do scold him when he doesn't do something right, he knows that I will get his back. He knows that when push comes to shove, I will be there to pick up the pieces and to say, I am responsible. And I think that is important. Not to say, main kya karu, usne kiya. I can say that to him, but to the rest of the world, I say, I apologize on behalf of Darpana. We are responsible and we failed. I'm sorry. I think to have people listen to you, you need to be strict about work, but they also need to know that they can always come to you with a problem, with an issue, with something about their spouses, their child. So I am sister, mother, boss, friend, everything rolled in one.
Wonderful, ma'am. I think you've given some characteristics, passion you started off with. Then you've also talked about the ownership that you take for, what happens and the results which come. I think you've also talked about openness in your communication, not just restricted to the professional work, but beyond that also. And of course, the discipline which puts all these things together, which is what is needed in order to energize and build the kind of teams that we need. We are at 4:43, ma'am. I'll hand it back to Professor Rao.
Thank you. That's a wonderful conversation going on. Ma'am, I think I told you also, but I keep sharing this with people. I was once sitting at chairman's office of ISRO in Bangalore. And then I was waiting for the chairman to see me. And then I was going through the books that were placed on the table. And one of the books caught my attention and said very interesting things. And those interesting things stayed in my mind. And one of them is, it is necessary in creative work to be able to see squirrels and birds. This is said by Dr. Sarabhai. And we kept on thinking about it. Creative spaces are research organizations, creative spaces are schools and colleges and universities like ours. Creative spaces are homes, actually speaking. And when I started expanding that, it went on to apply to every single piece of unit that we have. And then the profundity hit me so big. Oh my God, what a simple looking quotation there is seemingly applicable to almost all spheres of life that we actually delve into. Has this been spoken at home, ma'am?
Not in those terms, but when I say, do you smell the flowers? That's exactly what I'm talking about. And during COVID and post-COVID, I think all of us have lost so many people, colleagues, friends, family, that it becomes even more urgent. That's why I said you have to have the ability to say, I love you, and not postpone it till when you have time. And I think that's part of that as well, to be able to live in the moment and not postpone things, to be able to say or hug or not say, because life is in the living just now. Life is not in the living when I retire. Life is not in the living when I have enough money. Life is not in the living after the children have married. Life is now, this instant, when I'm talking to you. This is life, and that's where we need to be.
Awesome. Life is now. Life is in the moment, in the present. Thank you, ma'am. One additional question that I have, and I'm very curious about this to hear from you. You have had so much of learning, so much of open conversations at home, dining table conversations, and illustrious people all around in the family. Why did you have to go to IIM Ahmedabad, and why did you have to do PhD also?
I love learning. I love being a student. When IIM was being planned, I was like 5 or 6 years old. And in our drawing room, we have a large carpet where Papa used to take a 10-minute power nap after lunch before he went back to the laboratory. And he and Louis Kahn used to sit on that carpet every evening. And I would sit on Papa's lap. And I would ask Papa, what is this institution you are building? And Papa would say to me, darling, we now have to find trained professionals who can run the educational institutions, the hospitals, the institutions of agriculture, because we have just become independent and we have a lot of catching up to do. And management of institutions has to be done professionally. So I'm trying to start a school where people will be trained to go out and manage things that will bring good to a large number of people. And I would say to him, one day I will go there. And he would say to me, over the next many years, the day you finish IIM, I will retire from whatever else I will do. And you and I will go across the country looking at what people need, and we will help start institutions that will fill that need. Papa died 24 hours before I took my IIM entrance exam. I had older friends who dragged me to the exam. The plan was that I would go to IIM and that we would set off across the country. It was very difficult at the IIM because once I got in, everybody thought I had been taken on charity. It was extremely hard. It was 6 months since Papa died when I joined the institute. Till then, I had kept my whole emotional thing together because Amma was there and I was looking after Amma. My brother was in America. And I thought Papa would have wanted me to look after Amma, to be the strong one. So when I got to IIM, I had nearly a nervous breakdown. I didn't know where I was. I would be crying all the time. I had a car. I would find myself in another city. And it was really only when I started the second year, having scraped through the first year, that I came into my own and ended up getting one of the top medals, what was called the ICFAI. And by that time, the sheer joy of research had got me. I had a question that I asked myself and everybody since I was 14 and went to university, which is that why are Indians so easily corruptible? Why do they want to take a shortcut? Because I went from this very protected Montessori school into Xavier's College, and everybody was talking about, I know that invigilator, I know the head of department, so I will be able to get a first class. And I couldn't understand this conversation. And it dawned on me that everybody was really thinking about the result and how they could get it by hook or crook. So this question remained, why do Indians become corrupt? And that was my PhD.
Oh.
And in my last term in IIM, Professor David McClelland, who developed the need for power, the need for achievement, and all of those from Harvard, had come for 2 months to IIM. And he was then developing something called N-Power, which is the need for power. And he hadn't yet had research students working under him. But what he spoke clicked in my mind to answer my need of why do we become corrupt so quickly. So I was 20. I went to Harvard. I got admission in the business school and they said, come back when you're 30 because we don't take people your age. So I said, I'm not going to wait for 10 years. So I came back, went to Dr. Uday Parikh at IIM. There was a head of the organizational behavior department called Professor Pulin Garg, who really disliked me intensely and said, if you want to do a FPF, you have to go back to first year again. And I said, I'm not going back to first year. I've got extremely good grades. I'm not going to go back to first year. So I had to enroll somewhere. I enrolled in Gujarat University, which is pretty bad. But I was working with two people whose work excited me and I loved. And I loved the 2 years of my PhD. So it was really to answer my question.
Amazing, amazing, ma'am. That fire or the urge to keep learning, and the way you have narrated those sensitive, very important points with Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, very touchy actually, and I could see your voice a little getting duller while you were narrating that. Thank you very much for that, ma'am. And what I'm always amazed when we look at you, when we read, and when we come across some of the news items, is that you have made a very strong person of yourself, a leader who's displaying so much of strength, cutting across barriers, so on and so forth. The related question is institutions of management like IIM Ahmedabad, which is also continuing to be one of the topmost B schools in this country and the world. What is your comment on the current generation of the B schools, or what are the skills that in the changed environment now for the current generation that we need to impart or the students need to pick up? Just 2, 3 important points which are different from your times to now.
I think, let me first talk of IIM Ahmedabad. I think IIM Ahmedabad started failing Papa's dream very early, because even in my batch, which was the 9th batch, we were turning out people to go into Hindustan Levers and IFCO and whatever. Out of a class of 200, I think 3 of us went into doing something that was not to earn fat incomes. Today, I don't think it's 3 out of 800. I think what we should be teaching our students is to be ethical, to be concerned, to understand that it is only in the greater good that our good can be, that we can never protect ourselves if civil society is going into strife, and that the triple P of profit and concern and so on and so forth, all of that is very, very important. But nobody teaches ethics, nobody teaches ethical behavior. We only teach, I grab your leg to climb up, you can grab mine. And I think that's a huge failure, because that is what has led us to the world we are in. That is what has led us to not looking at the back end of our businesses. Is some woman in Tirupur getting exploited? Are we going into coal mining? So not only do people get trapped and die at the age of 30 from coal poisoning, but we are, I mean, it's the butterfly and the tempest. It's, you dig a hole there and it's going to have an effect somewhere else. This is what we need to think of. We need to explain to our B school students that it is only in the common good that personal good can happen. That's what we are failing in.
Amazing, amazing takeaway. Our good lies in the greater good of the
Yes.
society. That's a very, very important takeaway that you have given. I'll go to the next question, ma'am. Since the time is short, I want to make the most of it. This is one question keyed in by one of our participants, and I'll read that. Okay. And that question is, in the present day, the parents don't have the time to spend with the kids. The children say that there is a generation gap, and the kids tell the parents that you don't know. Okay. So on one side, there's no time. Other side, they say you don't understand us. There's a generation gap. How to alter this situation? That is the question put in by one of the participants.
We need to ask ourselves, what is life? Is life our career? Is career all that life is about? Is making money all that life is about? What a poor life. As I said, smell the flowers. Why do you have kids? Your DNA is not so special that you need to continue the line. Why do you have kids? Because you want kids, or because society has forced you? Then enjoy them, use them, have the access to them, give your time to them. Otherwise, don't have kids. We have enough populations. Why do you have kids? Never is it too late to start a conversation. Never. Start a conversation. Stop. Have a conversation. I see people in restaurants, all four are like this. Why go? Why have a conversation? Throw your phones away. It doesn't matter if you have 5,000 blue ticks on WhatsApp. It doesn't matter if you have it on Insta or Facebook. Have one person you can hug. Have one person on whose shoulder you can put your head down. Have one person you can hold your hand and cry or laugh. It is worth everything else. You don't have the time. Your life is not worth living. Assess it. Look at it. Are you doing what you really want to do? Do you really want to be the richest person in the world? And you'll probably find that your daughter's run away, your son's had a suicide attempt. Hello.
Very strong and very, very useful. So keep questioning, have open conversations, and ask yourself, what is life? Is it about making money, or is it about having your people around and making sense of the time that you can give to them? Awesome, ma'am. It cannot get better than this. With conversations like this, which we are having every Friday, these are not business conversations always. These are conversations not always trying to learn lessons, but it is also to see the mirror. I think through your presence, which is so energetic now, and the name of your organization is also Darpanam. In Telugu, we call it Darpanam. It's a mirror, showing the mirror. I think the whole purpose of life is to show mirror, and then from there on, we take it forward. The reality is so telling and so meaningful for everyone. I'll move to the next question, ma'am. And after that, I'll request the members in the audience to raise their hands so that we'll open the mic for them. And this question is from my side, and this is, if leadership were a dance form, which one would it be and why?
Definitely Bharatanatyam, because it is the most nuanced and the most sophisticated language from which lots of other dance forms have come, taken a little bit here, taken a little bit there, but Bharatanatyam wins hands down.
For those who don't understand Bharatanatyam, how would you explain again, ma'am?
I love you. What? Can I tell you in a secret? No, no. Inside me, I am in tumult. That's Bharatanatyam.
Wonderful. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And as I get the hands going up, we will definitely open the mic. But I think there are many more questions, but I'll take one more question. How do you think dance as an art could be inculcated in the minds of the next generation without actually forcing them? How can actually dance can have its own pitch without too much of effort? That's the question, I think.
You know, brain science has proved that physical activity lets out a lot of oxytocin and serotonin. But physical activity with music, which is dance, leads to even more of these chemicals being released in us, which make us feel relaxed, which make us feel good, which makes us feel happy inside, which creates a glow. So lead the children to that and they will be addicted. Don't make it into, you must learn dance. No, let them have fun. It doesn't matter what kind of dancing they do. Let them bop it out, fine. But the bopping will give them the spirit. Then guide them a little bit, or don't guide them. Just let them feel the energy flowing in them. You know, the body is the most liberating thing. And we keep our bodies like this and like this and like this, sitting like this. But open up the body and your mind opens up, your emotions open up, your spirits open up. Believe you me, I've been dancing professionally for 40 something years. Believe you me, if I'm in a depression, if I'm angry, if I'm anything, I just go and dance. Not necessarily Bharatanatyam, dance.
Amazing, amazing. I think that's the best pitch anybody could have given to pushing people to, I think, take to dance. Ma'am, there's another question that I wanted to ask you. It is about handling criticism. How do you handle criticism in art, activism, or anything that you
remember,
know?
Remember, Papa said to me, अगर उसको लगता है कि आप गधी है तो उसकी brain पे reflection है, आपके नहीं. When I first started dancing, I got this really strange review saying, Mallika Sarabhai is too beautiful to do. I'm going to continue talking. My camera has to change the battery, so I'll go off vision for a little while, but I'll continue talking. Mallika Sarabhai is too beautiful to be a dancer. Why doesn't she go into films? And I thought this was really bizarre kind of comment. So I cut out the newspaper and I made a boat for it and I filled my bathtub and I sank it. And I physically did that for the first year. And now I just do it emotionally and mentally, and it just sinks the boat. And that's the end of that criticism. If I know that what I'm doing is different, I can listen to criticism, but if what the criticism says is something I need to think about, then I will think about it. But for instance, when I took a position against Mr. Modi, when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, after the Gujarat, what is called riots, what I call genocide, I was called the whore of the Muslims. These were headlines. I was called Vikram Sarabhai must be turning in his grave to have a daughter who does this, and so on and so forth. And it could have destroyed me. It could have destroyed me, but I knew what I was saying. I knew what the truth was. And I was going to shout that truth from the rooftops, whether I was heard or not, because that is what I had to do. So today, sometimes I get upset and I have to sink the boat again, but that's how you deal with it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you, ma'am. I'll now request Professor Prasad to come in case he wants to ask a question or two.
Yes, there is a question. I'm connecting it back to what we have discussed to education. In a way, you have elaborated on it when you mentioned that there are 3 generations who are there in Tarpana. So the question is, given all that we have discussed about what needs to be done and how educational institutions, I mean, you took the example of IMA in a way. So to get there, what do educational institutions need to do? How do they approach it specifically? Because there is a past, there is a certain momentum, and there is some kind of conditioning, and it's one of the most difficult sectors to open up. So what do we do here? And if you have to be specific about management education, what do you think institutions should do?
As I said, first of all, the mandate has to be one of searching for truth and of taking personal responsibility for what is happening around us, what will happen in the companies we join, what will happen to the shareholders, what will happen to the consumers, and so on and so forth. I think that has to be a mandate from up down. Then I think teachers have to be given the freedom to say, I don't know. Let's look for the answer together. I think this is a big thing, this Guru Shishya Parampara that we talk about. We talk about gurus who never accepted that they may not know. That's why we do not have the Guru Shishya Parampara. In Darpana, we say often, they ask me a question and I said, I don't know, let's look it up. Why should it become an ego thing? I mean, knowledge is changing every day. We are living in a brave new or not so brave new world every day. Why can't educators learn to have the humility to say, let's do it together? I think that's an attitude that then goes on to the students who will also say to their colleagues, let's do it together. Let's find out.
Thank you, ma'am. I think what you put forth are some core values which need to be imbibed by the institution, and then it should be seen in the way the institution functions. Thank you very much. Back to Professor Rao.
Thank you, ma'am. One last question from my side, and that is, any instance of failure that has led to something like a breakthrough in your journey? Would you like to tell us?
Sorry, repeat that question. You went off for a second.
Any instance of failure that compelled you to take it to a breakthrough in your journey?
Oh, so many failures. For instance, when I was starting my career, I used to always think that I'm a fantastic mold for a creator. I can be molded into anything, but I'm not a creator. And through the 5 years of the Mahabharata, seeing the effect that Draupadi had on women across the world, I would get extremely frustrated saying, this is the kind of work I want to do, but I can't create. I don't know how to create. And I used to, after the Mahabharata, I would try and go to writers, to dramaturgs, to lyricists, and try and explain to them what I wanted. And I used to get very, very frustrated. Till a friend said to me, listen, if you are so clear about what you have to say, you have to just sit and wait for it to come. You will write. It might take a month, it might take 5 months, but you have to force yourself to just sit there and say, I need to create this. I need to create something that I feel passionate about. And if you fail, you fail. If it's not good enough, you try again. And if it's good enough, then you say, what next? And that's how my career became what it did. Through sheer frustration and an inability to think that I could do something.
Great, ma'am. I think over the last 60 minutes or so, we've been going through one of the best conversations we have had in the recent times on this platform. And I cannot thank you enough for your valuable time. And more than the time, I think it is the presence and expression with which you have enlivened the whole space here for us. And therefore, our minds are open and nobody's asking any question. This is a rarity. Everyone is awestruck. Not a single hand has gone up till now. All the questions that we have had before the conversation began, and we just landscaped so that we could ask you the questions in an appropriate manner. But yes, not just we, but large number of people around the country and the world are awestruck by your performance and your performing arts. And we have a lesson there for us to learn. Your life and your leadership and your learning and your degrees and your performances in dance, I think everything is an object lesson for leadership. And we continue to pick up one or two threads here and there so that we can apply that back in our own domain and see how we can open up conversations, open up our mind, and question ourselves and assess continuously whether we are able to make this life meaningful or not. And especially for people in creative spaces, yes, we will continue to see squirrels and birds and smell flowers too. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful evening.
Thank you.
I want to thank your team led by Sapna Mehtaji and many others who have made this possible. And I also would like to come to Darpana in my next visit to Ahmedabad.
Please.
And would like to stay in touch with you so that we keep learning from you and your life.
Would love to welcome you here. I have Vasant and Jayanti and 3 dogs who are on my team, all in my office.
Awesome, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Mallika Sarabhai. And one of the most fabulous conversations we have just completed. And next week, we will learn from somebody who is working on the Gaza war. And that is on Friday, February 28th at 4 p.m. That is Dr. Stanley, who reports usually from Gaza. He is
Wonderful.
the international editor from for the Hindu. I think we will learn lessons from him next Friday. Thank you once again, ma'am. All of you, please go through Darpana's website. You will have 10 pages of the profile, which we tried very hard to condense for presentation purpose here. I think in detail, you should go to the website and see beautifully created website. And I think we'll get inspired by every page because of the activities, because of the lessons, because of the nuances that are actually woven into creating that website and the life.
And I would like to invite anybody who is in on this conversation. If you visit Ahmedabad, do come and visit us.
Great invitation, ma'am. We are very thankful to you. We will note this as one of the most memorable conversations on WiseViews platform at ICFAI. Thank you once again, ma'am.
Thank you.
See you next week. Bye and have a great weekend.
My dogs are trained. They know exactly when a conversation finishes, then they bark.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.